Okay, so I'm going to get at a heart. I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to comment a little bit on it after you're done. But does every murder deserve to be in print, either online or in the paper? Does it every murder deserve to be covered equally 100%? They all get the 15 column inches.
Well, no, not all incidents that happen, whether they're crime incidents or anything else, um, necessitate the same news coverage. So I wouldn't answer your question by saying some murders deserve to be covered more than others, because that gets at almost a theological issue. I mean, everybody matters, and I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that in terms of all lives matter, Tracy. I'm saying
Yep.
every individual's life is important, and um, on the other hand, not every incident that happens, including homicides, have the same importance for a broader community, or have the same context that needs to be reported on the same way. I think premised on your question is this trend that happened several years ago where, I mean, it used to be that not all homicides were covered, and then that changed starting a few years ago. And there was a person in, I think it was in DC, right, initially, who set
Oh, yeah.
out to do a project where she said, I'm going to cover every single murder in DC. And I met her at a conference at NYU, the John Jay College of
Mhm.
Criminal Justice has an annual conference for journalists, and I met her there. And I actually was very moved and very struck by her project, because it was, I thought it was an exercise in humanity, just to basically say, we are going to treat each one of these as worthy of reporting and digging into. Now, her objective was to go beyond just simply saying, you know, person X was shot at this intersection at this time and leaving it there. Like, she actually was trying to do some reporting to find out what happened and to connect some dots, and thought that that would be a public service to do that. When other people have started to do this in other places around the country, including in Chicago, and then the daily newspapers eventually picked up on it, it just became like a box score, right? And so we get these box scores, 30 people shot, 10 killed. Here's a rundown of the addresses where it happened. And in most cases, the reporters just simply can't get any information on any of these incidents. So I don't know how much of a value that provides if there's no context for it, if we're not able to provide any information, if we're not able to connect any dots. It's just a string of disturbing information that doesn't help us unspool anything. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I also met the woman whose name escapes me, who did the Washington, D.C. Homicide Watch, it was called.
Right.
And I brought that to Chicago, the idea to Chicago. I met with her, and she wanted, like, her and her husband wanted $3,800 a month to lease the software, which was a hacked WordPress site, by the way. So I actually brought this idea to the Chicago Reporter and Kimberly L. Kelly and Angela Caputo. And I said, let us handle the data and the tech side, and you all do the reporting. Let's go to a foundation and see if we can get enough reporters to actually physically go to the courthouses, go and follow up. What is actually, and that partnership never worked, but the way I envisioned it was, one of the problems I have with the violence reporting in Chicago is, what is causing these shootings? I talked to Andrew Papachristos, a professor from Northwestern, a few weeks ago on our Facebook Live, and he talked about there's gang involved and gang related, and there's a difference between the two.
Right.
And I think that's dearly missing in all of this, is that, the police make up some line that their spokesman gives the media about whether or not it was gang related or whatever. But the public has no idea. Is this even in the uptick in Chicago, what is actually at the root of this? Is this just interpersonal conflict between gang members that has nothing to do with, pushing the gang's interests? What's going on here? Because if we don't understand what's going on, we can't treat the underlying causes, right?
That's true. That's true. And first of all, their names were Laura and Chris Amico.
Okay, yes.
and I wanted to do that so we are give
Good
them
man.
credit for
Yep.
what they were trying to do in DC. And you're right, as I recall, uh, Block Club, local news site in Chicago, Block Club, their predecessor, which was DNA Info in Chicago, they set out to do this as well.
Mhm.
And they were trying to peel back some layers, and it just got overwhelming. You have to staff this. You really have to, like you were saying, you have to do, this is like a really important, complicated full-time job if you're going to do it. And nobody wanted to really, everybody wanted to say they were doing it. Nobody really wanted to devote the resources doing it.
Right.
Your
And
point about gang related is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tracy. Yeah.
I was just saying, no, it's really hard. It would really, you'd really have to staff up, because you'd have to be in those communities almost
Yes.
full time to get the trust and follow what's going on and learn from the families what they've heard from the police, what was actually going on in the corners, get the sources. That's not easy. And that's not something you can parachute in. You can parachute in and get the quote from the family saying, "Oh my God, my son was just turning his life around." And I'm not demeaning that. I feel every murder is bad and we should want no one to die. But that kind of like soundbite crime reporting is, I don't think, is helping anyone, and
It's
it
not
takes a lot.
anyone. It's not informing the public. And your point about the sort of gang related and the other tags, I mean, there's a couple layers to this. You and I both know there, historically, there has been, widespread involvement in gangs in Chicago. There's no denying that. However, I think at this point in history, from what I understand, it's pretty complicated. So there's people who are affiliated with street organizations simply because of the block they grew up on, ranging to people who are running, criminal trafficking organizations that are under the rubric of one of the old time gangs. And there's almost everything in between. So you're right. When something happens and the police say it's gang related, does that mean, it's like an old blues song where somebody shot somebody over his woman? Or is it like a fight over a street corner that is valuable for, drug sales? Or is it a Facebook slight? I mean, we don't know. It doesn't add any information. But I'll tell you why it's done, in my opinion, is because, and not just my opinion from years of reporting, is because it is meant to assure a certain segment of the population in Chicago that, don't worry, this isn't random. We know who the people are who are doing this. And even though it looks terrible and it is terrible and it seems out of control, we actually have a handle on this. We know it's the gangs, and the gangs are killing each other. And that's bad. We don't like it, but that's what gangs do. It's sort of a shorthand way of trying to basically tell people, and let's be blunt, a lot of white people on the north side, but not just them. I think a lot of working class and middle class people in African American neighborhoods as well. It's trying to reassure them that, look, this is not something that it necessarily involves you. These are people who are involved in a street life and they're killing each other, and it's not something that ultimately you should worry about very much. There's so many layers of half-truths and lies in the way this is presented, but I think that it's essentially like a PR trick that the Chicago police and in other cities, police in other cities as well, have been using for a long time.